This is a traumatic situation. We collectively are experiencing trauma. And so, with today's reflection, I want to look at that trauma and at the possibility of post traumatic growth. The possibility that we can somehow come out of this having grown spiritually and emotionally more able to contend with the problems that were already here before this thing began, to deal with the fact that we are already living through the sixth great extinction, that the ecosphere itself is at risk, that inequality is growing, that injustice persists. I think that we can come out of this with greater spiritual, psychological, and emotional capacity. So this is the first of a series of reflections on finding meaning during the pandemic. Yesterday I did an introductory video about it, but this is the first reflection, and we're drawing a lot on the work of Viktor Frankl. And today I'm inspired by one of his students, Emily Esfahani Smith, who wrote a book titled The Power of Meaning: Finding Fulfillment in a World Obsessed with Happiness. And she recently wrote a column trying to help us tend to our mental health during this pandemic. And we are all under this pressure to be happy and stay positive, put on a happy face. The pursuit of happiness is enshrined, right, in the United States, and there's nothing wrong with seeking happiness. It's certainly one of my central concerns. But what we're learning from these people that are looking at meaning itself is that happiness is not something that you pursue directly. It's something that ensues from doing the often hard and challenging things that allow us to find meaning. So Esfahani Smith is looking at trauma, and she's pointing out that there's a dominant narrative on trauma. That there's a dominant narrative that centers victimhood. And I want to be careful here because I have people very close to my life that have experienced things as children that no human being should ever experience. So I'm in no way saying that bad things don't happen to people, and that there aren't real perpetrators and victims. But what we're saying in this pursuit of meaning is that we can get stuck in that story. And that the story of PTSD, of post-traumatic stress disorder, can lead us to think that there's such a thing as irreparable damage to the human psyche and the human soul. And I have been blessed to be involved in enough healing work, to be a part of it, to accompany people through such healing, to know that we can heal, that we can get through, that we can become even better human beings when we contend with the horrors that we have experienced. I am blessed to have some of the people closest in my life be people like that. And so honoring everyone's journey and also making an invitation right now, to commit ourselves to doing the things that are necessary to facilitate the possibility of post-traumatic growth. Because when we grow from our trauma, if we grow from this experience, we will find ourselves having a greater sense of purpose, deeper relationships, a more profound appreciation of life. And that, my friends, is what makes us freer human beings, more capable to contend with the very real challenges that are not just in front of us right now, but that are around the corner. So what Esfahani Smith names is that people who are resilient, people who grow through trauma, experience the same level of pain, the same level of suffering, the same intense negative emotions as the people that are not. But that somehow they can catch a glimmer of hope in all of it, and they can bring their attention to it, not denying the suffering involved, actually experiencing that suffering and the grief of it, but also keeping sight on that glimmer of hope. And after the experience is over, going back and spending a fair amount of time making meaning of it, finding something positive in all of it. That's a bold proposition in these days, and yet I think it's the most important proposition that we have in front of us as we are in this together. And so the invitation is to look at this possibility and set our minds on growing. Set our hearts on growing, on expanding our heart, so that we're not denying, we're accepting, we are looking at, we're feeling the fear, the angst, and the grief, but we're not being dominated by them. We're working through the grief to find wisdom on the other side of it. And we are daring to stand in the long line that our ancestors have put us in. To catch that fire that they're handing to us so that we can light the path for our descendants. By saying, this life, with all of its suffering, is meaningful. It's worth living. It is good to be alive. And from here, then we can find the songs and the dances and the prayers that they have held for us. Let's commit to grow.